Welcome to the Download, where we bring you discussion and analysis from a Catholic perspective. Today is Wednesday, August 9th, 2023. I'm Brad Eli here with my two co-hosts, Rodney Pelletier and T. Ray Brock. And joining us today in the fourth chairs, the man, the myth, the legend, the notorious Joe Enders, a.k.a. Mojo. Hey, Joe.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're completely welcome. Yesterday, voters in Ohio turned out to the polls in a special election, and they said no to Issue 1. Issue 1 proposed a procedural change to how the state makes amendments to the state constitution. That procedural change would have made it harder for pro-aborts to win at the ballot box in November. A yes vote would mean you'd need 60% of the vote in November to enshrine abortion in the state constitution. A no vote would keep the threshold at a simple majority, basically anything exceeding 50%. The rule change would apply to all future attempts to amend the state constitution for any reason whatsoever. Well, the votes came in and about 57% of voters said no to Issue 1. That means come November, it's very likely the pro-abort crowd will succeed in enshrining abortion as the law of the land in Ohio. All they need is more yes votes than no votes, a simple majority. And that was also a bill that everybody knew who was going to there to vote on that particular, everybody knew that this was about abortion. It's basically already passed. That referendum there to say, hey, can we increase the number that would have to be there to pass this in November, the November 7th election, can we do that now? And then they said no. So everybody, that was already a referendum on abortion, and it passed by 56%. It's going to pass in November. That's the reality that we're looking at.
Yeah, like you were saying, they made this so that it could very easily just slide into the abortion question. They're not talking about, they could be talking about, we need to amend the Constitution to, like the train crash thing that happened in Ohio, to make it so that train companies are more responsible or something. But everybody knows abortion is the thing. And the fact that, I'm not sure if we're going to get in it later, but there was a prayer rally, and the bishops of Ohio were asked to get involved in this. And the bishops of Ohio said, nope. Because this is a civil matter, it's not a religious matter. We oppose the abortion vote in upcoming thing in November, but we're not saying anything about this because it's merely a procedural.
To me, that's completely asinine, because everybody knew that this procedural thing was all about looking towards the pro-abort measure coming on the ballot in November. That's what this was all about. Everybody knew that. And that's why one Lone Star bishop, Tyler, Texas Bishop Strickland, Joseph Strickland of Texas, comes all the way up, that pro-life Catholic actor Jim Caviezel. And they attended that rally on Sunday. But nobody else. I mean, really? You didn't know that was all about abortion? Well, then maybe you shouldn't be, defending,
Their bishops are spineless.
Spineless, or you're just clueless. I mean, completely clueless. You shouldn't be wearing a mitre then.
And that's the best. That's the best that can be said about their non-cooperation.
Intellect or will, which one is it?
Some of the pro-lifers in Ohio, Peter Range from Ohio Right to Life, pointed to some outside forces that may have had something to do with the unfortunate news from yesterday. He says, out-of-state dark money special interest groups, including a Swiss billionaire, just spent millions of dollars in Ohio to deceive voters into not passing Issue 1. So that's a statement from today. I know that Joe's going to hit on it a little bit later, but Tom Zawitowski said something of similar nature. He's from We the People Convention. And then our good friends over at Cleveland Right to Life, Molly Smith and her organization, who's, it's the strongest pro-life group over there, one of the strongest pro-life groups in the nation. Part of her statement from yesterday, she says, they said, our pro-life, pro-parent coalition is more motivated than ever. And so although the news was rough yesterday, a lot of pro-lifers, especially Cleveland Right to Life, leading the way, they don't seem too discouraged. So that's something we can do.
My question is, 56-7% of the Ohioans voted to pass this referendum that says, nope, we're going to keep the threshold at 50% so that we can pass pro-abort law in November. That's why they voted for that. They didn't vote for that because they wanted to clean up the environment or not.
Right.
They didn't do it because they wanted gun rights or not on, to be, which they may also have coming down the pipe.
Well, now they can put whatever they want. Now they can say, oh, guns are illegal in Ohio.
And that's the whole Ben Franklin thing, this raw democracy where mob rules, the three people sit down and two are wolves and one's a sheep, and they're voting on what's for dinner, and that was his analogy back then. So we're basically, screw the republic, all of the constitutional binds on protecting your rights. Just screw that and just democracy, raw democracy, just mob rule. And we're facing a Gen Z, millennial, non-formed voting populace that says, yeah, why not? Good for me.
Rights are rights. They're called abortion
Right.
and reproductive rights.
They grew
Why
up
would
with
I oppose somebody's rights? But that's not what that is. Well, referring to one of Trey's quotes there, I found it amusing because, when on Monday an article on Red State or something came out about it, and it used that phrase, the dark money, religion, and politics behind, the opposition to whatever. It's like, well, yeah, the left does that too. That's all they do. Like, their religion is Satanism, but, otherwise it's politics and dark money. That's kind of how politics work.
Politics is dark money, isn't it?
It all is. It's, I don't, what, the term dark money is to make it sound like, oh, it's ominous. Bad people are giving bad money or something? What? But the loaded terms that the media uses, of course, the media's on Team Satan, so I wouldn't expect anything less from them. But the fact that they're putting it out there in those terms, and people look at that, like they wouldn't do a headline like that if it didn't, if it didn't get people's attention, if it didn't get the desired result. So the fact that they're like politics, religion, and money are behind this. Well, I mean, and genuine concern for, but also like, don't murder babies. Infanticide is evil.
It's just so rich coming from, the left, considering the fact that you have like Vanguard and George Soros,
BlackRock,
BlackRock bankrolling like all these LGBT and all these LGBT causes and stuff. I was like, you're using dark money to fund your values as well. And
that Samuel Bankman-Fried, the crypto FTX or whatever, like that was all into funneling money to Democrats in Ukraine. Oh, no charges for him. Nothing to see here, folks. Move on.
Well, I mean, if you're a part of the club, you're a part of the club. You know what I mean?
You're untouchable.
You pretty much do whatever you want. And that's sort of the problem. But I think I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of talk a little bit about, the current state of the law there. A lot of people think it's like, these evil conservatives changed the law and it's all over for them. I was like, well, I mean, abortion's legal there up to 22 weeks right now. Yeah. And it is in the process of being changed. So the left is kind of feeling a little bit of heat. If you actually look at it, there is a heartbeat law, and it's being held up in court. It's Governor Mike DeWine who signed the law in 2019. And the only exception for this heartbeat law would be for medical emergencies, which would translate to life of the mother.
Which is not a thing.
No, that's not a thing either. And Hamilton County is where Cincinnati is located. It imposed a preliminary injunction on the heartbeat law in October 2022. So what that preliminary injunction is, that completely prevents that law from being enforced throughout the state. So this kind of puts us in a bit of a pickle right now as the pro-life people, especially with this amendment coming through, because they want to slam that through so they can get this completely overturned. Now, the heartbeat law itself, I mean, we're going to see a lot of this stuff happening across red states. We saw it in Kansas. We saw it in Kentucky. We saw it in Montana. This has been a consistent trend among these red states, because what they're doing is they're going around to all the most liberal counties, all the counties with the colleges, all the counties with the schools. Actually, you could put up a graphic right now that we have about this specific initiative that the Democrats are pursuing, and you'll see that there was 1,315,346 yes votes for issue 1, and there was 1,740,094. And if you actually look at the counties on there, you can look and see that the main areas are Toledo, Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, and that one in the corner is actually Ohio University in that tiny little county over there. Because what they'll do is they'll just line up a bunch of people at the college universities and saying, they're trying to, they're trying to regulate your genitals, ladies. Get in line. They're gonna, it's gonna be the Handmaid's Tale, and you're gonna hear all sorts of other, wily nonsense that they conjure up about, taking personal accountability and not sleeping around while you're in college. To get these women to sign up for these ballot initiatives. And you'll see it reflected actually in the election results in those states. Specifically, you'll see that a lot of them don't even vote for the candidates. They just vote on the initiative because the Democrats are vested. I mean, vested. And like I said, they're putting all their dark money behind
in politics,
making sure abortion doesn't go away, because supporting abortion is almost like the sacrament you have to partake in to get into the Democrat Party these days.
It absolutely
I have a question on that. I mean, I understand the high-profile Democrats, Nancy Pelosi and Gavin Newsom, these guys, they're all in lockstep with abortion, and politically, they're in lockstep with each other. I get that, and they all came out for Ohio to vote this down so that we'd keep the threshold at 50%. I guess what I don't still totally understand is why would millionaire, billionaire people, philanthropists pool their money in there? What's in it for them? Why does the leftist billionaires? I get Soros on some initiatives, like he wants to get his DAs across the country, so he can, hey, well, that's where we're going to rally. We're taking down the country. What is it with the leftist billionaires? Like some lower lieutenants of the mega rich who are actually fronting these things because they know that tearing down the fabric of the country, the morality of the country, is what actually will ultimately take down America, and then tearing apart the family. Somehow maybe are they focused because Satan's final battle is on the family?
I think it's much more selfish.
What then the selfishness? Help us dial that in, because I'm legitimately wondering what is the first line selfish interest. If you want to just call these guys pawns in the game, what's the selfish interest of an out-of-state billionaire who says, "Oh, I want abortion in Ohio. I'm going to go in there and affect the election. I'm going to throw money into that." What's in it for him?
Well, I mean, you look at this. You look at George Soros. You look at Vanguard, which what's his and there's another guy. His name's Fink, I think, is his last name.
He's with BlackRock.
Yeah, Larry Fink with BlackRock is
same type of
this
thing.
The other one. So these guys, Klaus Schwab too, at the World Economic Forum. I mean, you look at these guys. These are people who pride themselves, who basically find their worth in how much money that they're able to make in their lives. They're addicted to making money, and they need. And if anybody knows, the best way to make money typically is to consolidate. So what they're trying to do is consolidate their power as much as they can to make as much money as they can with one another. Competition's what drives down prices. Competition's what drives up. Competition's what drives down, which drives up wages. So one of the things that they're looking at is a way to consolidate their power to drive up prices while not raising up wages. And one of the ways that they can do that is in countries with populations of people that do demand more money for their wages, like the United States and Western Europe. They're going to say, I want health care for my kids. I want to be paid a reasonable wage so I can buy a home, so I can do all those things. What they want to do, and you can see this through the immigration advocacy that they all advocate for, is they want to take people from the third world who have never expected more than not being literally dying of starvation and bringing them into the country. They want to replace the traditional American population in the United States and the population in Western Europe with people from the Arab world, people from the Latin American world who grew up incredibly impoverished because they're simply not going to ask for the same things that American workers
They'll settle for much less.
Exactly. And this is a conspiracy that's all over the internet that they call the Great Replacement. If you believe in it, you're a racist, obviously. So just like everything else you do. And the point and the entire point of the Great Replacement theory is that this is what they're doing. They're trying to consolidate power by replacing the populace that will ask them for more money. They want to keep that money, and they will bring in people from somewhere else to get that money.
I can see that as one of the motives. I mean, man works for many motives, and there's means to an end and an end in itself. Right. So ultimately, the end is self-glorification down here on earth, and that's pride and not so much avarice. Avarice is a means to that self-aggrandizement, if you will. But at some point in time, we were talking about this before the show, at some point in time when you got so much money, you're just like, there's nothing left to buy. I'm sorry, I bought it all. You know, when you have billions of dollars and you just, you know, how many houses can you live in at one time? How many cars can you have somebody else drive for you at one time? And when you get into the mega rich after that, I mean, Bill Gates and beyond, and Soros and beyond, and I don't even think Soros is the big boogeyman, he's a kind of a front man.
His son is now, but
They're a front man for others and stuff like this. So the fact is, you know, it's control, it's power, it's manipulation, it's I can run things. I want to just restructure everything, you know, and make man according to my image and likeness.
Well, that's the capital sin of pride. The sin where all the other sins come from. You don't need, avarice because you got it all. You don't need lust because you can get anybody you want. It doesn't matter anymore. It comes down to, wielding raw power and the pride associated with wielding raw power.
That's the only thing that makes their dopamine flow.
That's it. Yeah. That's the sky's the limit.
You can't get that rich unless you're addicted to making money.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, but that's still a means to an end, and there's more means to that than just getting more money in your bank account, because money actually is ultimately power to do what you want. But there's something else going on here. When you tear apart the moral fabric of a country, even the Greeks knew this with the Hebrew people back in the Old Testament days. They wanted to you know, they wanted to force you to eat pork. They wanted to have you stop circumcising your kids. They wanted you to start living according to Greek customs. Why? Because once you tear apart that religion and morality and all that, now they assimilate. Right. You can assimilate them. If they don't, you can't assimilate them. And that's what there was I wish I would have saved the quote. I could probably Google and find it again. But there was a Chinese general in the military in China in the early 70s said, we're never going to take down America unless we destroy the family, unless we break up that family unit. So you can start tracking a lot of these things and saying, really, you're just trying to tear down the moral fabric of the country, aren't you? Communist Russia. And there was, who was the guy? Brezhnev? Yuri
Bezmenov.
Bezmenov. Thank you.
Bezmenov. There we go.
And look up Yuri Bezmenov on YouTube, and you're going to find all this in spades. Basically, it's called demoralization. It's a whole program, the PSYOPs, that communism ran against the West in order to just say, okay, well, I'm not looking at making any money off you guys. I'm just trying to take you down. I can't take you down until I demoralize. Not demoralize in the sense of saying, okay, I don't want you to have morals per se, but I want to just take away your ability to reason, to rational, to make moral choices. And that's what's at stake here. Ultimately, the devil's trying to do that with these type of laws. He's moving his minions in place and for making money, making power, whatever. You got arms of the tentacle, you got little suction cups on each of the tentacle, 1,001 motives going on here. But ultimately, the devil's trying to do this. You got lots of pawns in the game. And these type of laws, tearing apart the moral fabric of the country, is what we see in practical terms going on in front of us.
There's a lot of organizations in Ohio, because when you're talking about all this, the question arises, okay, what do you do? Obviously, yesterday was unfortunate, so it's like, okay, what do we do now? Cleveland Right to Life, they're not being discouraged by all of this. I want to read a quote from the Catechism. It says, where sin has perverted the social climate, it is necessary to call for the conversion of hearts and appeal to the grace of God. Charity urges just reforms. There is no solution to the social question apart from the gospel. And so I think one of the best responses to this, you see groups like Created Equal. I think Mark Harrington is he runs Created Equal. They do a lot of grassroots work. They're out there outside the abortion mills. They're on college campuses trying to convert some of these pro-aborts and whatnot, but that's kind of the grassroots work that Created Equal and a lot of organizations do. That is obviously, I think that's the best response to all of this. That's the necessary work, and because you're talking with these women one-on-one, you're talking with these people one-on-one, and ultimately, like we were just talking about, if you're going to get an abortion, or if you're in favor of that, there's a lot, there's pride there, and so you're trying to convert the person in front of you, and so there's a lot of organizations who are doing a lot of good work in that regard, and I think that's one of the best answers that you can have.
Yeah, and going back to what you were saying here about the demoralization, what's the saying? Sin makes you stupid.
It does, yeah.
It dulls it dulls your ability to judge properly, like the sin.
And just for people to know that, Romans, I think it was just chapter 1, that God gave them up to a reprobate sense because
Right.
they were living against the natural law.
Right.
So this reprobate sense, it just destroys your natural ability to do common sense, natural law, morality, reasoning within yourself.
Dark as
So-
It closes you off to divine illumination.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Dark as the
the Beatitude, blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God.
Yeah.
So the inverse of that is the impure of heart cannot see God. They're locked in this lust in this world, so they're blind to the spiritual reality of things, and it just opens them to the demonic,
Which is even a
more.
further layer of all that.
That's a whole other
Spiritual
layer.
warfare, oh my goodness.
Discussed that in our Strength and Honor conference. Watch the video. But yeah, and what has happened is that Americans we live in a hyper-sexualized society, like super extra mega hyper sexualized. Like it's crazy. Just how sexualized media is, everything, absolutely everything out there. And people are they're addicted to that sin now. And
anything that comes between them and that sin needs to be thrown out, such as
destroyed.
Abortion's a contraceptive.
Yeah, right. I mean, and you can see just how deviant the sexuality and the culture has gone, because what are they pushing to do now? Trans kids, operations on children. So
I think it's all grooming so that they can use them as pederasts.
Exactly. Or to just damage them so much that they really can't oppose what these guys are bringing.
We talked a lot about the dangers of Marxism, the dangers of communism. We talked about quite a few of those things. But I mean, I want to say the hypersexualization and a lot of those things, yes, it was injected into the culture, and yes, yes, there was a program of demoralization and subversion, as Bezmenov talked about with the Soviet Union. I mean, he was a defector. I mean, he was a defector from that institution in the Soviet Union. So I don't doubt that any of that stuff was happening. But the main problem that I'm seeing here is not necessarily Marxism more so than it is liberalism itself, which largely is what our country was founded on. You know, you look at right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right there.
They didn't define what happiness.
They didn't. They didn't define what happiness was, and they didn't define what. They didn't define what liberty was either. And when you don't define what liberty is, what you have is this strange dichotomy where people don't understand the difference between liberty, which is the freedom to liberate yourself from sin and while also not corrupting others, and then you have the in the pursuit of happiness. The happiness is obviously to seek God. And people, when you give them such a broad span of what those terms mean, they're going to misuse it, and they're going to misuse it for exactly the purposes that the Marxists did. That's the point. The liberalism is what made us vulnerable to that attack.
Yeah.
Well, liberty became licentiousness over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
license, I think Sheen drew that comparison, liberty versus license, and people conflate the two often.
Well, that's what I want to point out. These people are not, these people aren't communists. They don't want to shift the means of production. They don't want to do any of those. These are neoliberals.
Well, Bismuth, he actually addressed that point in his video on YouTube. He said that it worked so well, their PSYOP program that they started back in the 20s under Stalin, worked so well for 40 years that by the 1960s, he said, Americans are doing it for themselves, doing it to themselves. Yeah. And basically that march through the institutions was just a wave that was being perpetuated now.
Yes.
You didn't have to have it continually be nursed along or injected into so much. So really it's true that what started off as communist psyops for 40 years, according to Bezmenov, turned into just a liberal wave that was a self-propagating, self-perpetuating wave,
the liberal wave
of just this immorality. And they said it's like these people had bananas in their ears. And he said so much so that you would not be able to convince them that it was somehow wrong, that it was until they actually felt the steel-toed boot of a communist soldier in their groin, he said. Yeah. Wow. Only then, when they're in a concentration camp and they feel that, will it dawn on them how far off the track they've come. But what started, true enough, as Marxism, I don't know if it really necessarily needs to be claimed to be. According to him, for the last, gosh, now it's been almost 60 years, it's just been a liberal, self-perpetuating wave that you just beget liberal-mindedness, and immoral-mindedness just begets more.
That's what happened. That's what happened. So what you're saying is true. So that's exactly what happened. You had this Marxist program come into place. Well, now the people in charge now, well, those aren't the Marxists. They're not the Marxists. No. They're the people that were trained by the Marxists.
Or trained by liberals who were trained by the Marxists.
Exactly. Yeah. They believe what they were believing. But this goes back even before Marxism. I mean, we can think about several issues. I mean, you look at for example, there was Freemasonic uprisings all throughout Europe. Following before that, those were liberal uprisings. Those were not Marxist uprisings, for example. You look at the French Revolution. That was another one. That was a liberal uprising.
Pius XII would say Freemasonry actually begot communism. So
I agree with that. I agree with that too.
Ugly stepchild of that.
Of course. Of course. And then, transgenderism. I mean, good grief. That started not in the United States. That started not after the Soviet Union. That started in the Weimar Republic of Germany. There was a sexologist by the name of Magnus Hirschfeld that was literally figuring out how to construct fake genitalia in Germany. And it didn't come to the United States until probably about 30 years later with John Money.
Now, what we have here in this country, and this is the scary part, we have, you alluded to it recently, let's give the recent tally here. We're 0 for 7 now, basically. After Dobbs v. Jackson was overturned, and the failure, there was failure after failure, basically. After that decision came down the pike, and Roe v. Wade basically fell. August of 2022, Kansas was the first one to have a referendum. And I want to tie this in against the liberals and the communists begetting the liberals who begot now. Who is the only moral teachers Gen Zs and millennials have? And they're the ones passing these things. Kansas rejected a pro-life amendment in August 2022. So therefore, you can actually, Kansas has abortion. Kentucky, pro-life amendment failed. Abortion in Kentucky. Michigan, pro-abort ballot measure enshrined abortion, protected right in the state constitution. Montana, voters shot down in Montana a ballot measure, it's all in November 2022 midterms, that would have protected infants born alive from attempted abortion, a botched abortion. Nope, can't do that either. Vermont voters overwhelmingly passed Proposal 5, enshrining reproductive autonomy in the state constitution. All these laws coming up there hit the state constitution, you can chuck them. California passed a referendum enshrining so-called abortion rights in the state constitution. Ohio basically had their referendum already passed, and it's just going to be the icing on the cake in November.
Everybody knows it's going to fly right through in November.
I don't want to say don't go out and, Molly Smith and the Army and stuff. Do what you can, maybe by some miracle, pray and sacrifice and everything else. I don't know.
Well, Brad, to your point earlier about Americans, how we're doing this to ourselves, I don't think that
was Bismuth. I'm just repeating him.
Well, no, but I think it's true. I mean, we're doing this to ourselves,
and have been for decades.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's why the lie of the pro-life. But anytime you talk about abortion, because we know that everything is spiritual, we talk about pride. That's the root of all of this, and we know that as Catholics. Any Christian knows that. So when you talk about abortion, the lie of the victimization of the women who go and get the abortion, that has to be dispelled completely. And that is the talking point. That is the main line pushed by the so-called pro-life leaders. And I will tip my hat to Mark Harrington, who I talked about earlier, from Created Equal. He, just a couple of days ago, I think it was, did a video basically, sort of providing a counter to that. And I don't think, like the Catechism says, we're not going to have just reforms. We're not going to have a true conversion unless people are really taking responsibility for their actions. And these women are actually, we're actually having charity towards these women, and we're not lying and saying none of this is your fault. Of course, they're personally responsible for doing these things, and the society around them doesn't help, diminishes that responsibility a little bit, but they know what they're doing, and that lie of women are victims needs to get dispelled from this whole pro-life so-called movement that we have in America.
In one sense, they are a victim in the way the trans kids are that stand up and rebelliously say, I want my genitalia, clipped or whatever. They're being used
they
by...
They need help, and then all the professionals they go to say, oh yeah, get the pills and get your stuff cut off.
They're not like women. They're not like kids.
Yeah.
They're fully autonomous adults. They're fully responsible for their actions.
Well, some of them are 16,
they should be punished. Well, I mean, we're not talking about the children involved. That's a difference. A child that's being manipulated into getting an abortion or being pressured into it by their family or by an abusive significant other or something like that, that's not what I'm talking about here. What we're talking about is autonomous adults that are women going and getting an abortion by their own free will and volition.
I wasn't talking about the fact that they shouldn't be legally held responsible for their, because if the child is born, 6 minutes after the child is born, they kill the child, they go to jail.
Right.
6 minutes before the child is born, they kill the child, now they're a victim of whatever. So, but what I'm talking about is they do have PTSD. By the grace of God, they have that trauma. Many of them do, and that's God's ability to reach out and say, you're not going to sleep very well for the rest of your life until you actually come to terms with this, and that's actually a merciful thing that you would have something like that.
And when you're out there, and you can actually see this. I remember I did some sidewalk counseling. There's awesome groups out here in Michigan. They do some of their pro-life work out on 8 Mile, and there's 2 big abortion mills out there. One of my coworkers kind of got me into it. I remember one woman, she was walking in, and I think she had her boyfriend or something with her, and she was kind of laughing, a lot of, making fun of the pro-lifers that were out there, and there wasn't many. It was myself and another guy. And they go and come out about an hour later, and she's crying. And it was a perfect example of you go and making a joke out of this whole thing. When you kill your child, you can't hide that, and you come out, you're crying. It's like, well, that's a natural response to what you just did, and so you can't hide this stuff, and the whole thing is just sad, and that's why a lot of pro-life sidewalk counselors they offer help counseling afterwards for those women. I think the Archdiocese offers a program or something of that effect. Post-abortion care or something like that, therapy, retreats and all that. And I love the Mother Teresa quote, same Mother Teresa quote, where she says, abortion kills twice. It kills the body of the baby and the conscience of the mother. And so...
and killing the conscience of the mother, that means the mother was fully responsible for that, because otherwise it wouldn't have killed her conscience.
Right.
And deadens her to that. And the other one that says that the mother is responsible for that, we have to realize the Catholic Church does, because of the excommunication that's there. If you are, as a mother, go in and say, I want to have an abortion, and you go through that whole abortion, you are considered excommunicated by the Catholic Church, and you need to go to a priest who has the faculties from the Vatican to be able to lift that excommunication in the confessional. So, that's the Catholic Church herself saying, Mom, you're responsible because you killed the baby 6 minutes before or 6 minutes after it was born. You're still responsible for the death of that baby. And we need to realize that's in the canon law, which is actually just reflecting what the theology, the spiritual teaching is of the church.
And it's by design of the people who've been pushing abortion. Even as, pro-lifers ourselves, we're like, abortion, it's abortion. Abortion is a horrific, horrific thing. It's infanticide. It's murdering innocent human beings. And we had Roe v. Wade making abortion the law of the land. That got overturned. Now, due to 45-ish years of conditioning by evil people who could manipulate the law, now people are accepting it. Even in conservative states like Montana and Kansas and everything, people are accepting abortion with open arms. So abortion, the idea, it's a right, it's a medical procedure, it's this and that and that. It's infanticide. Well, it's demonic. And it's so bad. It's so bad that Sister Faustina was told in her time, Poland, we think of, Poland as the great bastion of Catholicism, and it's becoming one of the last outposts. But even more so before World War II, she wrote in her diary that Jesus himself said he was about to destroy one of the most beautiful cities in our country, that's Poland, like Sodom was destroyed on account of the crimes perpetrated there. Having read about these things in the diary, I asked, this is her spiritual director, by the way, I asked her, what does the prophecy mean? She answered, concerning what she wrote and replying to a further question of mine on account of what kind of sins God was going to inflict these punishments. She answered, especially for the killing of infants not yet born, the most grievous crime of all. So Sister Faustina, I would assume through our Lord, considered the crime of abortion the most grievous crime of all, spiritual crime. And Poland, Krakow was Poland was the abortion capital of Europe at the time. People would flock from all over Europe to go get their abortions.
I have a hard
time
believing that Poland, because that's like Our Lady's nation, right? Our Lady's country. It was so Catholic,
know, right?
Catholic Poland.
Yeah.
Like 95% Catholic or something.
And it was back then, not now.
This was back then, but that shows just how evil this evil got in, and it got a foothold, and God needed to chasten, needed to chastise that country, and boy did he chastise the people and the nation. And how can we expect anything less now, especially since we know what we know about the faith, and abortion is becoming the law of the land, and in so many states. Something like Roe v. Wade, but it's pointless now because just everybody's just accepting it.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, you can look at the statistics. I think that like 36% of Americans now. There was a recent poll that came out, are saying that they are pro-life, and that's with exceptions, by the way. Yeah. It's even lower if you actually have no exceptions. And there's a lot of conservatives out there who are trying to argue that. That they're trying to confuse voters to get them to sign these referendums and stuff, which there's some truth to, obviously. So we have Tom Zawitowski, the president of the national organization We the People Convention, who commented in a statement, and he said this. He said, fueled by tens of millions of dollars in TV ads and other media, Ohioans turned out in historic numbers as over 3 million voters, 38% of all registered voters, came out to vote on Issue 1, which was defeated by a margin of 429,000 votes. Looking at the county-by-county voter results, it is my view that the left did not win Issue 1 as much as the conservative right lost the vote. This was primarily a result of confusion that was intentionally injected into the campaign by very clever and I would say misleading TV ads run by the left at the start of the campaign. These ads split the conservative vote just enough in rural communities to sway the election and cause the defeat of the issue. Now, if we could put up that graphic of Ohio again with the thing up there, you can actually see on the top right corner of Columbus, so that would be the eastern side of the state, you'll see that there's all those counties on the border of Pennsylvania. And those counties on the border of Pennsylvania, those are all rural areas. And those are traditionally more Republican areas. So you can see that maybe there was some confusion going on there. Maybe they were trying to say, that there wasn't exceptions for life of the mother. Maybe they were trying to say other things like that. But in all honesty, does that really matter that they're trying to confuse people? Of course they are. It's what's politically advantageous. They kill babies. They don't have morality.
Yeah.
Well, on that point right there, it doesn't go back to a Roe necessarily saying, well, for 45 years. That particular thing we're saying with confusion really goes back decades even before that, because at this point in time, even the Republican side has abortion with exceptions. Yeah. Right then and there, you're not thinking reasonably. If this guy commits a felony rape, why does the baby get the death penalty? And you're saying, well, in cases of rape and incest and abnormalities and all this, we can go ahead and kill the baby. Wait, stop, punch the brakes right there. Yeah. You're not doing reasoning right there. You're not a moral person right there. You're saying in some of these instances it's okay to kill a human innocent life, isn't it? You can just because you think you can. Okay, well then you got a slippery slope that just opened the door.
It's important to note too, with the life of the mother exception that everybody talks about. Oh, you're just going to let a mother die if she gets pregnant and she's going to die from the pregnancy? It's like, well, no, that was never the law of the land, first of all, and that's never been the position of anybody. What they do with this life of the mother thing, and the reason they like to say the life of the mother, is because they want a woman to be able to say, it's if they feel as if their life is in danger. And if they feel as if their life is in danger, so let's say, they have a migraine or something before they're going to get an abortion, they could say, I have a migraine right now, I feel like giving birth could be a danger to my life. Okay, you can get an abortion legally.
Well, they call it the well-being of the mother, the whole psychological. So it's not even the life of the mother anymore.
Yeah.
It's the well-being, means psychological, emotional, financial.
It's a cop-out.
Or she's depressed. She says, I'm depressed, and so, I'm going to kill myself, or I can have this. And they're like, oh, whoa.
This is the problem with they always do this with the abortion issue, and it's only the abortion issue. They fabricate the most fantastic sob story that you could ever imagine in your mind and try to say, see, this is worse than murder.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the answer is always, no, it's not.
When you talk about the most heinous crime, according to Sister Faustina, which is actually according to God in the Revelation there, that abortion was. Father Chad Ripperger had this to say about that. He said, because it's so heinous a crime, and if you guys have watched Nefarious, when he was just like, abortion, the demon was just like freaking out, oh, another abortion, yes. That actually came from true exorcist data, okay, their interactions there. So they understood that type of reaction there, and they put that into the movie. It was extremely truth-telling. Ripperger, who's also an exorcist, said that from his understanding, from exorcisms and all that same type of data you're getting, is that because abortion is so heinous that actually it gives permission to a demon to come out of hell to tempt humanity. So we're corporately, sinning here and allowing hell to have more demons on the playing field at all times. And it was so bad. I learned this from Jesse Romero over the weekend because I was talking to him about this. And he said Ripperger had a talk 6 months ago that from his understanding, interaction, all this with these things, that he said basically hell is empty now. All the demons. He said there's been over 1 billion abortions committed, and abortion is not the only reason a devil, sacrilege and all sorts of stuff you can get out, you give the demonic world a more of a just right to tempt humanity. But from his understanding, abortion was a big one. And there's been in his estimation, over 1 billion abortions. I don't know if you're doing chemical abortions and everything else, but the pill has like 1% of the time is an abortifacient. And that's been going on forever. So those type of things, he's put 1 billion, more than 1 billion worldwide abortions. And we're corporately a world against the hell here. And so he says hell is empty. So that's what we're up against right now. When you say extremely intelligent, marketing campaigns and just almost diabolical intelligent campaigns.
It is.
They're just channeling this stuff. They're like, oh, I got this great idea. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I just thought it up myself.
Literally
Probably
straight
not.
from hell.
They're just channeling this stuff.
Yeah. And I don't want to let these guys off the hook. The bishops, where the heck have they been?
Well, they weren't at that pro-life rally on Sunday, or telling people from the pulpit, hey, don't vote for this.
Right, because everybody and their dog knew this leads to abortion in November, enshrined in state law. The bishops knew it. The reason for this confusion, the reason why voter confusion existed, there's no voter confusion on the left, by the way. The Democrats are in complete lockstep, every single one of them, with abortion funded by taxpayers for any reason at any time, period. That's it. Meanwhile, us, the Republicans are farting around with, 22 weeks or heartbeat or not, or exception this and that, and there's zero unity, in the Republicans for this. Meanwhile, hell and the Democrats are completely united on this. And the fact that the bishops, the vast majority of bishops, have been so blinded from the spiritual reality of this. We tend to bring this down to, this is politics, this is this and that. This is a spiritual warfare. We're contending with demons. When you and Mark and the other guys go to counsel people at abortion clinics, those places are like flies on manure. There's demons all over those places. You're literally in the same place where demons are attached to these women who are making these decisions to go in and murder their children, and they come out with more demons flocking on them as they leave. The bishops have said nothing about this. They don't even understand. They want to say, oh, well, we didn't want to participate on yesterday's vote because it's a civil matter. No, this is a spiritual matter. They're completely blind to the spiritual realities of this is hell unleashed upon our earth. And the majority of our American bishops are doing nothing about it.
Here's our biggest issue here. People don't understand. It's like, well, why can't the right unify? Why can't the right do any of these things? Well, guys, we're not unified right now because we're not unified under any moral principles right now, because we're factionalized into thousands of different denominations.
From Andrew Tate, right? Is he on the right somewhere?
That's what I'm saying. So
all the way down the line.
There is no unanimity in values among conservatives right now. There's just a bunch of different people with a bunch of different opinions. So that means that everybody has a different agenda. Everybody has a different endpoint. And when everybody has a different endpoint because they don't believe the same thing, well, they're a Protestant. I don't have a problem with contraception, but I don't really like abortion. And then you obviously have, well, I don't mind feminism. I do mind feminism. You have all these different disagreements among Christians, and it's all because of the division of the church. And as we know, the only thing that can shield humanity from the demons is actually the church. So, I mean, when you don't have a church that's unifying people against the demonic cohorts that all seem to agree on one thing, which is the promotion of licentious sin all throughout the world, then you're not going to get anywhere. You have to have a united church. So what's the solution? Well, Catholicism's the solution. Well, the church.
Not just that. Trey, can you read again the passage from the Catechism that you wrote? Because there's a really pertinent part in there.
Where sin has perverted the social climate, it is necessary to call for the conversion of hearts and appeal to the grace of God. Charity urges just reforms. There is no solution to the social question apart from the gospel.
So the conversion of hearts is what's going to do. All these people, the ladies walking out of the abortion mills having just committed this horrific sin of murdering their own child, they need a conversion of heart. They need a reversion. That's what the gospel was. Repent, sin no more.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. And that's why.
Yeah. And then you get the grace of God. But because we have hell unleashed on our earth now, it's making it so much harder because so many bishops are just either, silent or even cooperating in all this stuff. It makes it so much harder. So, viewers, what do we need to do? Conversion of heart starts with our own selves, and then that spreads out to other people. So I think the solution, and maybe the pro-lifers, Molly Smith and the guys in Ohio and everything who are fighting this, what are they going to do, once it becomes law in November? You got to appeal to the heart, to the conversion, because they can't do anything with the law.
And even with that image, that scary image that we were talking about, where the demons are being unleashed, and
already have been.
Sure. And Satan's obviously
there.
Well, yeah, Satan's he's the ruler of the world, and so you think of the pro-life, the sidewalk counseling and stuff, and there's no way I can know, but I don't doubt there's demons around the place and around the women. But even, to think of it, because it's all about the conversion of the heart, even if that woman is going in there, she's got demons tempting her, the demon doesn't have any power over that person unless you allow it, unless you give into that temptation. And so there's always hope for that woman. And I don't doubt for a second that there's angels, an army of angels.
Well, they always have a guardian angel.
Right. Well, not just with them, but right with all the the sidewalk counselors. And so obviously it's all spiritual warfare, but you're right, Rodney. That's really the only thing this is all about. It's about the conversion of hearts, and it's about living the gospel out, and that's where that's where the answer is.
Conversion is not just truth. They're talking about the viewers and solution, and that when you're talking about demonic warfare here, which we're really up against. to overcome this stuff, prayer and fasting. And I just, everybody's like, oh, I'll say, I'll pray. Well, is there fasting? You got skin in the game. Are you suffering in some way on the cross? Well, I gave up a little extra ketchup on my fries. Does that count? I didn't have 2 scoops of ice cream. I just had 1. Well, okay.
Double pepperoni on the pizza.
But, for the people outside of, who are students of history, if they read Toynbee, 21 civilizations he studied, and he did this over the course of about 60 years. He got like about a 10-volume work on world history. Tremendous guy. And he noted that 19 of them corrupted from within. They weren't taken from without. You think, oh, this country, and they're going to come over here and take. No, you corrupted from within, like Rome and Greece and everything. And so they corrupted from within. And the last moral boxcar to pile up at the end of the track when civilization collapsed in those countries was pederasty.
Yep.
So we are at transgenderism, cannibalizing the youth. We're saying, oh, you're born that way, Father James Martin. We're basically, grooming this generation for pederasty. And that Ohio law that passed, they tell me that actually in November, that's going to also stop if a girl wants to have an abortion, she doesn't have to notify her parents anymore. And also it has to do with transgender surgeries. If your kid wants to have a transgender surgery, they don't have to get permission. I mean, you'd have to get permission to play football, right, in high school. But if you want a transgender surgery, when you're in 3rd grade, no, you don't have to have that. So this generation here is like the last crossroads now. And it's really abortion was just getting us to that next and final step. And why is it pederasty that piles up at the very end? Why is that the last boxcar? Because you cannibalize your next generation of leaders. We talk about the Strength and Honor Conference, need to man up and be leaders and all that type of stuff. There is no leaders in the next generation when you take all of your moral, the potential moral manhood and just cannibalize it, because you're scrambling a little kid. Yeah. When you sodomize a little kid like that, there's just no way that he can get his brain around the fact that he was just an object of use there, and he's going to go on and be this great, strong, moral. Well, you can by the grace of God and everything, but they don't get any of that grace because that's also shut
And not
down.
a white pill, Brad. Give us a white pill to finish the show.
White pill, God wins in the end, and it's not a matter of whether God's going to win or lose. He's already won. He's on the winning side, but the question is, in your lifetime, will you be on His side or not? Father John Hardin said, if you're not about converting souls and evangelizing, you don't have any great hopes of entertaining going to heaven. The same thing, if you're not in this game at all, I don't want demons and abortion. I just do my own thing, play with my own toys on the weekend stuff. Okay, well the sins of omission are going to be huge for people on Judgment Day, far more than sins of commission. I robbed one bank when I was a little kid, but I never did anything good. And that's what you're always got for in the gospel. They get you for that.
White pill. God wins in the end.
God wins in the end.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of The Download. Now please join us as we finish in prayer, begging Our Lady's intercession for our nation and our church. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Salve Regina,
Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. A te clamamus exules filii Hevae, ad te suspiramus gementes et flentes, in hac lacrimarum vale, ea ergo advocata nostra, illos tuos misericordes oculos ad nos converte, et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende, o clemens, o pia, o dulcis Virgo Maria. Amen.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you again for joining us for The Download. We premiere a new episode like this every weekday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. From all of us here at Church Militant, God bless you.